Hello everybody. We're going to try to talk some sort of a central message. I would say the title is Divrei Chizuk, but we're going to talk about the inyan of Hakaras HaTov. Gratitude. Gratitude children should have to their parents, parents to their children, and most of all, us to the Rabbi Shalom. I want to start with a story, a famous story. I happen to use it frequently in talks that we give in shul, but Eli Wiesel was one of the most famous Holocaust survivors. He went on to educate the world about brotherhood and brotherliness, and he eventually won a Nobel Peace Prize. He was a great literary scholar too, and he wrote over 60 works, some historical, some slightly scholarly. He wrote a book on Rashi, some about the Holocaust, and a lot of novels. He also wrote a lot of novels. Now, one of his early novels is called In the Gates of the Forest. It was written in French. He was a polymath, and he knew how to write in French and in Yiddish, German. He knew how to write in Spanish, I believe, and he wrote books, I think, in every one of those languages. He was a friend of Rav Menashe Klein, one of the Gedolei Hador of the past generation. Rav Menashe Klein is buried about 10 yards away from the Beis Yosef in Tzefas. And from what I understand, Eli Wiesel, while he wasn't religious, but had a great friendship with Rav Menashe Klein and paid for the building on 16th and 53rd, which was Rav Menashe Klein's headquarters till he moved to Eretz Yisrael in the final, I would say, decade of his life. That building has very large letters about the third or fourth floor that say, Harninu Goyim Amoy, Kidam Avodav Yikoim. They were words to inspire the future vengeance that the Rabbi Shalom will mete out on Germany for the destruction that they wrought on Klal Yisrael. Eli Wiesel, in the prologue to his book, In the Gates of the Forest, has a story that he likes. He uses it differently than the Hasidim use it. It's a Hasidic Maisa. He uses it to say God-like stories, and there he's going to go on and say a story. But there's depth to this Maisa. And the story goes like this. When the Baal Shem Tov was worried about tzaras that were going to come on to Klal Yisrael, and he had a foreboding feeling of ominence, so the Baal Shem used to go to a certain spot in the forest, and he used to make a specific fire, one known to him, al pi the different shemis, and he would say a specific tefillah, a prayer, and he would be able to get a Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. This was the Baal Shem's ability. The Baal Shem Tov's Talmud, Rav Ber of Mezrich, the Maggid of Mezrich, many years later, when he had the same foreboding feeling and he understood something ominous was about to come to Klal Yisrael, he would say, I know the spot in the forest, and I even know the prayer, but I forgot how to make the fire. And he would ask Hashem and beseech him and say, please help me. The Talmud of Rav Ber, this is already a third generation Hasidic master. He was Rav Moshe Leib of Sasov, also a very big Oyev Yisrael. When he would have this feeling of ominence, this feeling of gloom, so he would go to the forest, yet he didn't know the prayer, and he didn't even know the fire. He only knew the spot, and he would stand there and say, God in heaven, I know the spot, help me, help me. This spot was very important to my teachers and them before them, so help me out. And Rabbi Yisrael of Ruzhin, who's the father of the Rizhina dynasty, he didn't know the forest either. He didn't know the prayer at all, nor would he know of the fire. He would sit, as was known, Ruzhin was Malchus, and he sat in his throne, and he would say with his head buried in his hands, God in heaven, I don't know the fire, I don't know the spot in the forest, and I do not know the prayer, but I know the story. Help us in the merit of my knowing this story. This story still warms us, he would say. This story still gives us chizik. Help us in the merit of this story. I know this story. Now, many different understandings. Wiesel goes on to say, well, God loves stories. But the Hasidim understood that that wasn't the case. The understanding is that different great men had bekoicham to do much more. And they had an ability to create certain hispilus and to create certain, what we would call storms in heaven. And as the generations move on, we get weaker and weaker. But if we know and we still have an understanding of what was, and we're makir and we recognize it, and we understand what it is, and we could thank for the fact that we had that, and we could be makir toiva that we had that, so then we could also be poil. By holding on to that rope, we could be poil, and the rope could pull the bell and create the storm that it needs to create in Shamayim. There is a similar medrash in Eicha, it's brought down in a few places, and it quotes Rav Levi bar Zavdi, or Zavdi ben Levi. I'm not sure whether it's Levi bar Zavdi or Zavdi ben Levi, but he said like this, he says, Arba malachim hayu, there were 4 kings, umasha bikesh zeh loy bikesh zeh. Each one requested something different. What one requested, the other one did not request. He says the first king that stood was David, and he was very mighty, and he was a ferocious warrior. And he said, Erdoif, Asig, let me chase my enemy, let me apprehend my enemy, and let me destroy my enemy. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nasan B'yodeh, the Rabban Shalom gave it to him. Ahmad, Asa, after David came a weaker king, one who wasn't as capable as David HaMelech. And he said, Erdoif, and I might even apprehend them, but Rabban Shalom, you do the killing. I don't have the strength to do that. And the Rabban Shalom says, Ani noisen biyodecha, I'll be happy to give you that too. After that, Ahmad Yehoshaphat. Yehoshaphat got up and he said, Rabban Shalom, I could just chase. That's all I could do. No, he said, I can't even chase. I'm sorry. He says, Ani eini yochel lirdef, ve'eini yochel lahasig. But Ani oimer shira. But I'll bang the drum. I'll bang war drums. And I'll create noise, and I'll create a certain amount of song to the Rabban Shalom while this is happening. And Hashem says, I'll do that for you. Then comes Chizkiyahu. Now let's understand who Chizkiyahu was, but we'll talk about him in a minute. And he says, Rabban Shalom, Ani ein koyach bi, loy lirdek, loy lahasig, veloy loy mashira. I haven't got the strength not to chase, certainly not to apprehend. And I don't have the strength to even say Shira. I can't bang the war drums. I can't beat to any tune over here. I want to sleep on my bed. Ve'ata oiseli nisim. And you do miracles for me. And Rabban Shalom says, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you. But here's the interesting thing. I want to talk a little bit about Hezekiah. It almost looks like he was saying, I know there was a history of greatness. And my great-great-grandfather, he knew how to do war. And his son after him, well, not as good, and his son after him, not as good, and I'm really completely bad. But Hezekiah was tapping into that. But there was a failure here that I want to analyze and discuss today and see how we could somehow benefit from that, benefit from the teaching of Hezekiah's failure. One must understand that Hezekiah lived 2,750 years ago, roughly. And he was a king sort of at the shrinkage of Klal Yisrael. Hezekiah became a king after one of the biggest Rishon. His father was Achaz. Achaz was the biggest promoter of idolatry in Klal Yisrael. Not only that, Achaz attempted to sacrifice Hezekiah on the altar of the Melech. He was looking to have Hezekiah offered as a human sacrifice. Hezekiah's mother saved him. So it's unclear. There are some opinions that hold Hezekiah never needed to have derech eretz for his father. A father that abandons a kid or even more attempts to murder a kid. There is a position, it's brought down in a sefer called Big Day Aaron, which is a sefer from Rav Aaron of Worms, that seems to hold that if a father sort of destroys the child, there is no chiyuv of kibud av. Just a slight digression to explain this point. In the Chut HaMeshulish, which is the authentic biography of three of the greatest Jews that ever lived, the Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the Chassam Sofer, and the Ksav Sofer. This is the great Eiger dynasty, the great Sofer dynasty. There is a story about the Chassam Sofer leaving his father at the age of 12 to go learn with Rav Nosson Adler. It's a very troubling story, and it's a very complicated story to digest and understand. But it seems what happened was the Chassam Sofer at the age of 12 was a prodigy. And he was able to get up and speak for 40 minutes in front of a shul full of great tzaddikim and goinim, and he was able to stimulate them. And at one point he asked a kasha, and he was told that the Rashba asked that kasha, and the Chassam Sofer, 12-year-old Chassam Sofer, went on to give an answer and explain why the question is not a valid question. When his father, who was a big Yirei Shamayim and a Talmud Chacham, heard his son talk flippantly or even slightly flippantly about the Rashba, who was a Rishon that lived hundreds of years before his son, he walked over to him publicly and smacked him in the face. One of the people sitting there was Rav Nosson Adler of Frankfurt. Rav Nosson Adler was going to go on to become the Chassam Sofer's principal Rabbi. And he looked at that and he says, you don't have a right to have a kid like this. This type of treatment threatens to destroy one of the greatest future lights of Klal Yisrael. Rav Nosson Adler, incidentally, was a very controversial figure in Klal Yisrael, but one of the most stabilizing things about Rav Nosson Adler was that he was the Rebbe of the Chassam Sofer, and that's the tremendous, and Rav Nosson Adler, I think, might have cited this, or someone else said it, that Avram Avinu, when he was told Lech Lecha, one of the things he asked Hashem was, what about my father Terach? And the response was, Ani poitrecha mikibud av. I absolve you of having any type of responsibility to your father because he was willing to throw you into a burning fire for the sake of an idol. And therefore, you're not mechuyev anymore in kibud av. So this concept that Chizkiyahu's father was a person that should have been mechubed by Chizkiyahu is not the case. Chizkiyahu's father was a villain to Klal Yisrael, and he was a villain to his own son Chizkiyahu. We therefore understand something that's in our religion, the fifth Dibritz, one of the most important parts of our religion, which is Kabed Avicha V'Simecha. The essence of Hakaras HaTov is to respect your father and mother. Freud understood, and he said this in an essay, that if you don't respect your father and mother, you're not going to respect God. Your father and mother is the vehicle towards learning how to respect God. This is a davar yedua. When somebody is not enamored by God, just ask them, how long have you been fighting with your father or your mother? So the basic idea of finding Rebbeinu Shloim is seeing it through the conduit of a father and a mother. Yet, Chizkiyahu understood that his father was not that conduit. And the first act that he did when he became king was Girer Atzmos Aviv Al Mita Shel Chavolim. He dragged his father's body on a bed of rope, mangling his father's body, and then throwing him into an open grave like a dead dog. This was something that was highly, it was shocking to Klal Yisrael. Yet, hoidu loy chachamim. The chachamim in his time admitted this is the adequate treatment. This is how you end an era. You want to end an era of idolatry? This is how you end an era. You want to end an era of someone who had no connection to Klal Yisrael or to his own children? This is how you end the era. Now, so Chizkiyahu, not to be confused as somebody who's not Makir Tov, but I would point out that if you saw Chizkiyahu's first noble act, first act as a sovereign, you might say, this guy doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that you're supposed to honor parents. He's not a Makir Tov. Chazal said not like that. They agreed with him. Then, he comes onto the stool of power, and he changes everything. He eradicates every idol. He takes all the temples and burns them down. Anybody that's committed to any type of worship other than the Rebbeinu Shloim, he either kills or convinces that they have to take a new path. Many people in Klal Yisrael saw Chizkiyahu as the real atheist. He's rejecting all the gods that they worked on for so many years. All the gods that they promoted, he's the atheist. This oppositional force is one of the worst forces around. They saw this great king who not only desecrates the body of his father, it was supposed to be an in-state funeral, but now he's desecrating every idol. And if that wasn't enough, about 6 years into his reign, the great king Sancherib, who had 7 names, Tiglath-Pileser, Ashurbanipal, Shalmaneser, the Gemara brings down all the names, and he was one of the most mighty kings. In fact, I once saw different structures that were dedicated to him and bas-reliefs in the British Museum, and it's pretty much a whole room that deals with the Assyrian tale. And he was very mighty, and he pretty much had the world that was known then under his thumb. He vanquished 10 tribes of Israel, moved them all into different areas of his dominion. The only thing that's left is Jerusalem, is Hezekiah and Yerushalayim. And he comes by and he's ready to conquer it and lays a great siege around Hezekiah and Yerushalayim. He has the bulk of his army there. He's fighting on another front somewhere in Ethiopia, it's true, but he's got the bulk of his army around what he considered the eye of the needle, which is Jerusalem. It's a beautiful spot. It's a place that he wants. He covets it desperately. Everybody understands Yerushalayim is the soul of the universe. Now, he has his soldiers encircled, and he actually was a benevolent king. One must understand, Sancherib did not destroy people and didn't have wholesale holocausts. What he did was he denationalized people. He moved them away from where they were connected to and brought them to new spots, to new areas. He repatriated them in other places, which was considered a very interesting strategy, and he was ready to do that for Yerushalayim. Until I bring you to Eretz Acheres, which will be as nice as what you have. So he sends 3 emissaries to talk to all the people that were standing around the wall, and he tells the emissaries to instruct not Hezekiah, talk over Hezekiah, talk to the people, foment a revolution. This was a leaflet campaign. This was like the United States throwing leaflets in Cuba, or like the Israelis throwing leaflets in Gaza, telling the people, don't fight with us, we have only your benefit in mind. And this is what Sancherib does. He sends like a leaflet campaign through Rabbi and through one of his people named Shevna, and they're telling the people, look, Hezekiah did nothing good by you. He was watching idly as 10 of your 12 tribes were vanquished. He destroyed all your idols, which means that he's not a godful person. Then he forced all of you to learn this Torah, which is an antiquated, ridiculous Torah that has absolutely no benefit for you. What do you think you're going to get from following Hezekiah? This is Hezekiah, and he's devastated beyond devastation. He goes into the Beis Hamikdash together with Yeshaya Hanavi, and they're crying a river of tears to try to get God to intercede over here. They're frightened beyond fright. And all of a sudden a miracle happens. It's not clear what the ness was. Chazal discuss many possibilities. It could be a virus came and killed 180,000 of their best soldiers who were encircled around Yerushalayim. Something very cataclysmic occurred that night. The Malach went out and killed everybody. V'hinei baboyke kulam pegorim mesim. Everybody was dead. There was nobody left alive. So you're talking about a ness which was epic. Something that happened just in the nick of time. Many things happen, but when they line up seamlessly in the right timing, in a way that saves a whole nation, that's a tremendous ness. So Chazal tell us something very important. There's a pasuk describing the future birth of Hezekiah in the beginning of Yeshaya. Ki hine yeled yulad lanu, and we behold there's going to be a son that's going to be born to us, and his name is going to be Menashe. It's an important person, and he's going to redeem us, and it's a herald to the great Hezekiah. And then it says ulemar behamishro l'shalom ein kates, and the word marbe, meaning to the yoke of the leadership that he's going to have and the peace which has no bounty. Marbe, all of a sudden, in the middle of the word is a closed mem. Chazal tell us, and this is also somewhat enveloped in a pasuk in Yeshaya Chavdalad, and I want to share it. Chazal tell us that Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasos es Sancherib Gog uMagog v'Chizkiyahu Melech Mashiach. At this point, the crescendo was so deafening. The Jews saw the miracle. They were so connected to God. They understood that every effort that they put in paid off. This Renaissance king who destroyed idols had it right. The fact that he brought Torah into Klal Yisrael, he had it right again. And they all were in one heart, beating together to say Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach. So Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lasis Goygu Magog, the Sancheirav Goygu Magog. Hashem says, okay, this could be the end. This could be the revelation where Sancheirav, this horrible king who has the world in his hand until now, this could be the Armageddon I was talking about. And let's turn Chizkiyahu into the Messiah. Nobody knows who Mashiach is. Mashiach is somebody that's going to do a tremendous renaissance. Somebody that's going to bring everything back to life. Well, 2,750 years ago, Hashem thought Chizkiyahu could be Mashiach. Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu lases Sancheirav Goy Gumogeg v'Chizkiyahu Melech HaMashiach. Ella, you know what? At the point that the Rebbeinu Shalom was ready to crown both, one the villain and the other the hero, Pascha Midas Hadin Lefanov. The Midas Hadin, meaning the voice of judge, the voice of justice, the voice of correctness, said, how could it be? How are you going to allow this? And the voice said like this. He says, let me just read this. He says, Ma David Melech Yisrael, she'omar kama shiris v'tishbachas lefanecha. If David, the king of Israel, who made so much song up, every step that he walked and every battle that he won, he thanked you with song. The thanks that rolled off his lips was they were so special that we use them daily now as our psalms, right? V'lo yasisa Mashiach. He only merits he's going to be Mashiach ben David. You didn't turn him into Mashiach. Chizkiyahu, she'asisa lekol hanisim alolu. You turn Chizkiyahu, you stuffed with miracles above and beyond anybody else. V'layom Ashira, and he didn't even think for a second to say thank you. The word thank you didn't come out of his mouth yet. No thank you. No, where's the thank you? V'layom Ashira, Taseu Mashiach. He's spoiled. He doesn't deserve to be Mashiach. He's pampered. How could you turn him into Mashiach? This is not a good leader. You can't anoint him into the messianic dream. So it says, Pascha Oretz, the ground, which was watching, the ground started talking. He says, Ani Omer Shira B'Shviloi. Let me say the shir. And that's what the pasuk says, Miknafa Oretz Shamanu. From the wing of the, Miknafa Oretz means from the wing of the earth. We heard Zmiris Shamanu. We heard an effort at saying thank you. Tzvila Tzaddik, to try to do what the Tzaddik is supposed to do, to stand in sort of as a surrogate. I'll say thank you for him. And Hashem says, no. Justice is right. What justice is saying is correct. Chizkiyahu, you were almost there. Had you said thank you, had you understood the concept of gratitude, maybe you would have ended it for Klal Yisrael, and 27 years of sorrow would have been obliterated. But no, you didn't. You didn't come through and you didn't say thank you. And if that's the case, it's not acceptable. And the earth starts crying. The earth says, Razili, Razili. The earth says, oh my gosh, I have so many secrets now. I'm buried with tragedy because Boigdim Bagadu, Beged Boigdim Bagadu. It's going to be a long time. It's going to be at least 5 waves of tragedy until this resolution occurs, until the messianic resolution occurs. What happened is that you can't have a replacement for thank you. So now Chizkiyahu is revisited. What did you do with your father? Was it real righteous indignation and the desire to be completely committed to Hashem? Or was it that you don't really understand gratitude the way you're supposed to? Everything is revisited. And the truth is, there are some versions in Chazal, I think it's a Yerushalmi, that holds that he didn't do right by desecrating his father. And I think what they're struggling with is that if Chizkiyahu is sort of the archetypical type of gratitude giver, so then what he did with his father was an anomaly, and it has to be interpreted as a Hayrah, it has to be interpreted as martial law. But if Chizkiyahu is someone that doesn't give gratitude, and in this case we saw that he cost Klal Yisrael in a very large way. We could have had the final Yeshua 2,750 years ago, but he didn't say thank you. He didn't say thank you. So the understanding over here is that to thank the Rabbi Shalom is much more profound than what meets the eye. It's anamkus, and I want to talk about it for a second. That means I want to say 2 or 3 nekudas and then tie it all together. I want to show different actions that were taken by some of our greatest people during plague, pestilence, and disease. For one, there's a tour in Siman Mem Vav that brings down from Rav Natrunoi Goin. Rav Natrunoi was one of the early Goinim, and he writes like this. This is the only source, it's known only from him, that the idea of Mea Brachas that we say every day, and we start, every one of us starts our morning with 15 brachas. We go to Pekech Ivrim, Malbish Arumim, Mater Asurim, Zegev Kfufim, Reika Aretz Alamayim, Shasali Kol Tzorki, Amechem Tzadei Gover. We thank for our eyes, we thank for our posture, we thank for getting out of our bed, we thank for our shoes, we thank for our belt. There's an amazing odyssey of thanks that goes through our morning prayers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Where does that come from? Who instituted that? Where was that from? So, most of the brachas and the Seidat Tefillah is Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. But according to Rav Natrunoi Goin, this predates that. This comes from David HaMelech. When David HaMelech came across a plague, and 100 people were dying every day in Klal Yisrael. 100 people were dying. So David said, it must be that we're looking at God's majesty and miracles, and we're not thanking Him for what we're supposed to thank Him for. We're not recognizing the fact that we're supposed to be Balei Hoidah. We're supposed to be Ati Yeducha Achecha. We're supposed to say thank you Hashem. We're not recognizing that. So he says like this, he says, if that's the case, if we're not thanking, let me institute 100 times thank you every day. And every Yid wakes up from then till now, with 100 brachas, whether Shmoneh Esrei, whether it's Birchas Hamazon, whether they're all nichlal in the, and the Gever Hukam Ol, David HaMelech was Hukam Ol, Ayin Lamed is 100. Rav Natrunoi Goin believes that this was the source of the 100 brachas. It was David HaMelech's response to plague and to tragedy. Learn how to thank, learn how to recognize, learn how to see. And it doesn't only mean Rebbeinu Shalom, because once you become a thanker, you thank everybody. You thank your wife. You thank your children for not fighting. You thank them for cleaning up. You thank your parents for doing everything for you during this difficult time and every time. Thank you becomes a way of life. The scientists believe that thank you enhances a person's life, gives them much longer life than a person who doesn't thank, gives them happiness. Thank you becomes a central part of a person's being. David HaMelech understood that's the way to stop Magefa. It's not only teleological, it's not only metaphoric, it's also be'atzmusay and be'yisoidai. Thanking every individual makes life better for everyone around you. Everyone wants to be near a thanker. Everyone wants to be near a noticer. And as a result of that, you live longer. You become a relevant person. You become a person who's valuable. The Chafetz Chaim used to say, if you want to live longer, say hello to your grocer. Become more valuable. Your grocer now is going to be looking for your hello. That's going to be a value. The Rebbeinu Shalom, when he thinks of taking you, will say, but the grocer will miss him. That's one nekuda. There's another nekuda that I want to say, and we mentioned this, I think, this morning on the shir I do in the morning. The Chidah, when he was quarantined, he was for 40 or 60 days in a village called the Lazzarito, which was in the northern part of Italy. And there, either he was held because there was disease or because he was an immigrant to the Italian principalities and everybody had to be quarantined. It's not clear to me why, but he had no Sfarim and he had no ability. So what he did was he wrote a sefer out of his 57 Sfarim. He wrote a sefer which is very well known, and it's called Shem HaGedolim. And the purpose of that sefer was it was a bibliography and a biography sefer. He wrote about many Sfarim that meant a tremendous amount to him, and he wrote about many people who were probably the most important pillars in the transmission of Torah in Klal Yisrael. And when he explained it, it now becomes clear to me what he was doing. He said, listen, we learn so much Torah from these people. We're all here because we're standing on their backs. He says, if a person walked in every day and there was food, bread, and cutlery on the table set up for him, it would be incumbent on him to find out who's preparing this meal and who's feeding him. Only a person who has no hakaras hatov, only a person of low caliber and low quality would not try to find out who is preparing the food for him. He says, you know what? That's why I'm looking right now to try to figure out who prepared all this food for me. Who are the Rishonim? Who are the great people that wrote books that give me life? Who are these great people? To me, I understand that during the time of Magefa, what the Chidah grabbed at was Hakaras HaTov. He understood, okay, no Sfarim, no learning. I'm cloistered. It's 60 days that I'm going to be here in this Lazarito, this lockup. Let me do something that will depict a certain Hakar. Let me make myself a person who's gratitude oriented. How did he do that? By revealing to the world who the great people that came before him were, giving us small biographies of their greatness and how they touched the world and what they did for the world. Now, and I want to say one more story, and this I think sort of, maybe two more stories, brief stories. This I think sort of locks everything up and gives a little bit of an understanding. I say this story all the time. It's a story that I would love to say I live by it, but it's a story I would love to live by. The story is, people in shul have heard me say it, but I'm going to repeat it. A story is like a song. It bears repeating over and over, especially one that could motivate people to places they should be motivated to. The Maisa is like this. There was a fellow who had a brain tumor which the doctors in Israel deemed inoperable. The individual decided to do a search. He went to Meilech Fier, who's one of the most important medical referrers in the world, and he told him that in Boston there's a specific individual who developed a type of surgery which would benefit this brain tumor, and it was a gamma knife, which is a radiation knife. The person, Rabbi Schwartz, contacted Dr. Foster, who was this doctor in Boston, and asked his connection for an appointment, and he was given an appointment in 2 weeks. The surgery obviously would be a $50,000 to $70,000 surgery, and the hospitalization probably another $50,000. He had Kupat Cholim, and they would not cover anything at a country like this. Besides, this was somewhat unproven. It was investigatory. It was unproven. So at that point, this was something that his insurance would not cover. So he has 2 weeks, and his wife asks him, what are you going to do for these 2 weeks? He says, look, I'm going to collect enough money to buy a ticket. I'll get the surgery, and when I come home, I'll collect money to pay my debts like everybody else does. I'll go throw myself at the mercy of my American brother's feet and ask them to help me pay my medical debts. A supportive wife, she says she understands. He comes home after the first day. He has the money for the plane ticket. She says, what are you going to do now for the next 2 weeks? He says, I'm going to rest up. And I'm also going to study some Talmud. I'm going to study some Gemara. I'm going to try to figure something out. What are you going to study? She's curious. I'm going to find out whether this doctor, who's a pioneer in an area of radiation that no one else has developed or discovered yet, does he deserve a special blessing? You see, there is a Gemara that says that great men of intellect, people who like Einstein and people who contribute a tremendous amount to the world, when a person sees them, they deserve a special blessing. I'm going to look into it, whether he deserves a special blessing. Okay, she's amused. For the next 2 weeks, he discusses this question with different rabbis. The conclusion is, when you see him make the blessing, don't make the Shem Malchus. You make the bracha without Hashem's name. Okay? The day comes, he flies. He comes into the office. The secretary interviews him. She takes his vitals. He's an amicable individual. He gets right into Dr. Foster. Dr. Foster comes in and says hello to him, and they shake hands. And Chaim Schwartz holds the doctor's hand for about 5 seconds. He closes his eyes and he says a short bracha, Baruch shecholak mechachmasai lebasav adam. Loosely translated, it means blessed is the one who gave some of his wisdom to a human. But he says it under his breath. The doctor looks at him and says, What did you just mutter? What did you say? Oh, he says it's a religious thing. No, it's my thing. You wouldn't get it. Oh, he says, no. He says, I'm a very well-traveled individual. I've seen a lot of cultures. I've seen a lot of different situations. What did you just say? Please tell me what you said. He says, okay, I'll tell you. they sit down and he says, look, as Jews, we're trained in the concept of gratitude. We're obligated to have gratitude. And there's a whole series of blessings that dot our day and our life that are small descriptions of our gratitude. For example, if we eat any type of food, we make a blessing. The blessing is about gratitude. If we see something that's unique, like a mountain, a river, lightning, thunder, we make a blessing. The blessing is about gratitude. If we smell something that we consider nice and good with fragrant that's beneficial, we'll make a blessing. We make blessings for everything, and the purpose of the blessing is all about gratitude. We're about gratitude. We're a people that's engaged constantly in gratitude, in recognition of God. So I have to tell you, you're a person whose wisdom benefits the world above and beyond other people. There's something about what you've developed and the work that you've put in that the rabbis feel you also deserve a blessing. And when I saw you, I was full of gratitude to the Lord who gave the world people like you. That's it. And the doctor sits down. He says, I was never so humbled by a compliment like that. That's amazing, Mr. Schwartz. I said, amazing. And as they're talking, the nurse knocks on the door and she says, Dr. Foster, Mr. Schwartz has no insurance. I guess we'll be referring him for clinic. And he says, no, Mr. Schwartz is my guest. He'll be in my hospital. I'll cover everything. And the surgery was a success. And everything worked out fine. The basic idea is gratitude. Gratitude begets much more beneficence. A person that understands what he got, understands and recognizes why he should get more. Gratitude is just simply recognizing what you have. Is simply recognizing the good that your kids provide, the good that your parents provide, the good that your siblings provide, the good, recognizing, underscoring it, mentioning it, saying it over and over. It's not only to God, it's to everyone. It makes you somebody so much more fundamentally appreciable, appreciated, and worth being around. And I want to just close with a small story. There was a kid who was collecting, he had a hat that was turned upside down. He's collecting money. He's got a hat by his feet, and the sign says, I am blind, please help. And every few people that pass by, it's a train station, drops a coin, and he hears the clink. Then a man comes by. It's in the morning, he's going to work, and he says, kid, can I fix your sign up for you? And the kid says, yeah, why? Is it spelled wrong? No, he says, let me just fix it for you. And he writes something on the sign. He crosses out the kid's writing. He writes something else on the sign. Over the day, the hat gets so full that the kid has to empty it twice. And it's practically filling up a third time. Success that the kid never had. And as the guy is coming out of the subway towards nightfall, he walks up to the kid, and the kid recognizes his footsteps. And he says, sir, what did you write? It was so amazing. I made more money. I'm not going to need to sit here for about a month. He says, what'd you write? He says, all I wrote was, it's a very sunny day. You all have a great, enjoyable day. I can't. Please help. I accentuated what everybody has to be thankful for. I accentuated what everybody should realize and recognize they have. And then I pointed out that you don't have it. People are much more willing to thank and do something about their thankfulness when they recognize and it's pointed out to them that they have something you don't have. And that's what I did for you. Rabbi said, we see what our great people did b'shas Magefa was they dove deeper into the concept of thanking. They understood that that's a prospect that makes you a person of interest. God likes people who thank. People like people who thank. People who thank are a pleasure to be around. So I would just encourage everybody that probably a way to speed the conclusion of the situation that we're in is if we start understanding the thank you to God and start allowing it to trickle down and affect our family members, thank everybody around us, recognize that that's a very important avodah, and we should all be engaged in that. And let me just close by saying thank you all for tuning in. It was such a pleasure to see all of you.